Well, when I got involved in it, 15 years ago, I would go to the shows and I was up against guys who were much older than me, who had much more experience. And as I said in the previous question, I didn't get any awards for many years. I certainly had problems, like for example, finding the right airbrush for me took me years. That was, of course, that was also before the internet. I didn't have discussion forums where I could go on to and ask questions on websites like Missing Links, for example, which is a big one, or TrackLink. It wasn't until I got involved with the Armor Modeling Preservation Society back in America where I started meeting some people. One guy, Dev Interpreting, was a big help for me, helping me with discover the right airbrush that I needed, because up until that time I was only using, I can't remember the name of it anymore. It was a Badger, and I just couldn't get the fine lines and the fine misting and the gradients and stuff, and he gave me a lot of help. And that was one example where I was starting to get discouraged. If it wasn't for my passion and my interest in the history and in the subjects I was doing, I may have lost interest for the hobby altogether. It's surprising because these days we have, the younger modelers do have forums that they can go on to and they can ask a question, and there will be 4 or 5 well-known or very talented modelers that will be quick to help them out. So it's a tough question that I really don't have a concrete answer for. I've spoken with other modelers about this, and I think with computer games it's pretty easy. It's right there. It's the only problem is once you finish the game, you really have nothing material to show for it. Do you think, maybe a question I have for you, do you find that maybe as some kids get older and they become young adults, maybe they want to get more? Because I've noticed, like for example, Staff Snares, he's relatively new on the scene and he's very talented. And there's been a couple other guys in their, their late 30s and early 40s who are coming into the scene who are doing very well, especially in this club, the Lier Club, and in the KMK Club. What would your feelings be on that? That maybe there is still fresh blood coming into the hobby, but everybody's a little older.
I think as Jay mentioned also, when you're young, you maybe have the interest in it, but there are other things, girls, you're finding your way, and at a sudden age you find your girlfriend probably, and then you start your marriage, your 2 children, and then at the first you can't go out every night because otherwise the wife is angry, and a model club like this is a good.
Well, a lot of men say that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and they are at home and they start doing it again. Yeah. When the children grow up and they have more time for each other, they are at home. And,
well, it's funny you say that. A lot of people who get back in touch with me who have had personal questions about my techniques and what I do, or the people that I've learned my techniques from, and they say, well, we stepped out of the hobby when I was in college because I got more interested in women. It's always I got more interested in women, I got more interested in women, which is very normal, but they seem to come back in after. As far as going back to the original question of young people getting involved, there is like, you got M Workshop over in Singapore, driven by a guy named Bernard Char, and he's bringing a lot of young people in there, and a lot of times then what he'll do is I'm not quite sure of his system, but he seems to be drawing in a lot of young people, and I guess he, I don't know, they buy the model and he turns around, and if they're talented, that he can sell the model and he takes the proceeds and invests in the club, and he's getting a lot of young people involved there, but I'm not quite sure how he's doing it. But I was talking to someone today, and I'd like to learn more about what he's doing, and maybe we can do something like that in this part of Europe, or in my part of Spain, or in some parts of America, or the United States as well, or Mexico, where there are organizations who are very into modeling in the different countries I've been in, even Russia. There's a lot of people who are very passionate there. I've noticed in Eastern Europe, though, when I was in Brno about 3 years ago, there was a lot of young people there. I don't know why. Obviously, it's a different culture, and they got their own reasons, and they have their own teachings of history in the schools. So for some reason, maybe we need to look at what's going on over there and why they had so many young kids at that show. I mean, young kids, and they'd sit down at my seminars and I'd say, here's a brush, this is how I do chip paint, for example. I'd give it to the kid and he'd do it just as good as me, which kind of scared me. So there are, depending on where you're from, there are young children that are into it, but maybe we need to look into what some of these other countries are doing and see if we can't take some of that and bring it over here. But that comes to the problem too, is for example, with me, I'm very busy with the company, in MIG Productions, and with my own freelance stuff. That's where I get a lot of my extra money to travel to see my parents twice a year when I have it. So me personally, I don't know how much time I could devote. So you'd have to find someone who would be willing to sacrifice their own modeling time to get involved with something like that.
Yeah.
So I can't give you an answer to this question, but I can say, we can look here, we can look at what they're doing, and maybe that's something we can do in the future. And I would be happy to try to get involved and help out as well.
Okay.
But again, it's like you guys, Lier, I have a lot of friends in the Lier Club who are here. I have, but I'm so far away, and it's hard for me to stay involved with what you're all doing here. I wish I was closer, but unfortunately, I'm not. So.
Okay.
Is that all?